Hi folks, welcome back to Tim's project car. In this episode I'm working on the rear end installation and making a few improvements along the way. I did decide to put some frame bracing in. These are basically, you could buy these connectors because they were optional on muscle cars back in the day. A lot of people dub them 4-speed bars because they came with the muscle cars with 4-speed transmission, and it connected the pivot points of the lower control arm to the upper control arm on the frame, making the frame a little bit stronger that way. Since I had the metal and the ability to make them, I just did this instead of spending the money. The upper control arms change their orientation a lot based on the load being put to the rear end. At rest, they might be pointed down a little bit. They will be on my car. But even foot braking it, like you hold the brake, you step on the foot brake, it'll load it a little bit and it'll come up. You know, at the starting line, you know, for a drag race. And then under heavy torque, it might go northward. So the direction of force being applied to the upper cross member changes depending on the suspension. That's why I want to support it in more than one direction. So these are the braces that I made. As you can see, there's some twists and turns to them because you know, it's not an exact straight line from one pivot point to the other. Here's the other one. It's stuck down a little bit. They'll take a little more painting, but they're likely to get scratched during the installation anyway. But those are going to be installed. The next thing that we're working on is the differential itself. Now this is the differential housing. The center section is supposed to come on Tuesday. That's what they told me last time I called. The axles I have, they're in the box where they won't get dirty. So this is going to be, I put on an easy coat of paint. I'll put another coat of paint on once it's fully installed because you know it's going to get scratched by the time the installation is complete. These are the upper control arms that I bought for it, or they call them trailing arms actually. They're from QA1. There are different brands. I'm not, you know, saying one brand is better than another because honestly I don't know. I just believe these are probably good, so I bought them. And they allow adjustment. Now these can affect alignment as far as side to side. They could cause a little bit of rear steer if they're aligned too far out. So it takes, you know, some time and effort to get them lined up correctly. But the advantage of them is, one, you can put preload in the rear end at the drag strip if you need to. And the other more important one is the set pinion angle, because at this point I have aftermarket lower control arms, I have aftermarket upper control arms, I have a Ford rear end, 3-year-old car. The odds of everything being straight and perfect just because, I don't think the odds are that good, so I believe adjustability is in order. So I'm putting these in, and I recommend other people use something similar. Okay, so let's take a look under the car, and I'll show where these brackets go. Car, as you can see, I'm coming from the other direction. This is the cross member. There's the bolt that the upper trailing arms pivot on, or one of them does. And it goes back here. I'll adjust this light a little bit better. There. So which bar is which? So here's this bracing installed here. As you can see, it's a close fit. I'm probably going to order a longer bolt for there. This one is fine. I could put the nut up on there. And once it's installed, it goes like that. And it connects this pivot with that pivot. And then when the rear control arm is there, it's not quite a straight line, but it'll be in the neighborhood of a straight line. And in the process of this, it'll pull in the way it's supposed to be. Okay, this is the brace for the driver's side installed. It's only finger tight. Those bolts are all in there and on. As you can see, the pivot on the back there goes through that side. This other side, the bolt is too short. I'm going to have to get longer bolts for that. But the test fit is complete, and after this I can go ahead and put the rear end back in and move on. Okay folks, the rear end is in as far as the housing is concerned. There's a bunch more left to do. I got to put in the springs. I got to put spacers. These lower control arms are much narrower, if you can see. And there's going to need to be spacers put in there. The sway bar is going to need to be tightened up. All these bolts need to be tightened up. These bolts, all four of them, need to be longer. For whatever reason, they don't quite make it. And I'm going to have double nuts on each of those bolts so that they can't, because face it, the car's meant to be beat on. You don't want things loosening up. And of course the shocks have to go in. As you see, it's a pretty nice setup. I got the frame braces in there. You can see those. And so now the thing to do is to put the springs in and see how that looks. Now, one thing I can point out about this, other than the fact that that rubber grommet's a pain in the butt, is that these mounting locators are much taller than the stock original ones, which were only like a ½ an inch tall on the original rear end. This would allow for spacers to adjust height a little bit. I mean, it doesn't give you the type of adjustment you'd get out of coilovers, but you do have some, and I think that's a good thing personally. So now I'm going to start jacking this up. Not quite there. Okay, we're getting closer. Time to put some blocking. Personally, I like to go overkill on the blocking, or what would seem like overkill. And the reason why is because a car actually did fall on me once, and I suffered a fractured collarbone from it. And that, of course, is minimal compared to what could have happened, as I'm sure we all can imagine. Okay, so here's the rear end that's in. Further things that I need to do is to replace the bolts that I need, install the shocks. I have to put on the backing plates. I have to put in the seals. Then I have to put in the bolts that hold the center section in. I just left that other side covered up and taped over for the sake of keeping it clean, because that would be a disaster to buy this beautiful rear end and then destroy it with dirt. Hi folks, welcome back. Progress is moving forward on the rear end project. I just got done putting some of the rust inhibitor onto the backing plates here. Going to let that dry, and then probably tomorrow I'll spray it, probably just rattle can, black paint, the high temperature because it breaks. And these are ready to go on the rear end. So once the center section comes in and then I can install the axles, I'll do that all together. But this is, a little bit of prep work that I'm doing. Underneath here, things are coming together nicely. I've got the shocks in, I've got the springs in. This is sitting close to where the ride height will be. Not the full weight of the car is on the springs, but it's pretty close. So, I can understand about how it's going to sit. I haven't set the pinion angle yet because there's no point until the center section and drive shaft are in. But there's a couple things I wanted to show. One of which is I chose the middle adjustment on this. There's 5 choices. And there is a specific reason why I chose the longer bolts. I'll explain that in a little bit. But it is on purpose. I got the braces in and I got the shocks in. So it's just about ready. It's just about ready. A lot of progress was made this weekend. So now we'll move on to the next step. Okay, I wanted to explain a little bit better about, why the bolts were like they are, where they're extra long. And this is a little cartoon that I drew. Please, excuse my professional artistry. But the idea of it is that you have your pin that the control arm swivels on, and there's a plastic bushing inside the control arm itself. And then you have the bolt that goes through. Now in this case, there's spacers that go on either side of the pin. And so when you tighten the bolt, it locks the pin to the bracket on the rear end. But it doesn't, it doesn't cinch down the control arm itself, of course. And the reason why I made the bolts longer than what it seems like it was necessary is I wanted to make sure that the shanks, none of the thread was touching that bracket, because I've seen this where you take things apart and the holes are wallered out because of the thread, because the threads are sharp, whereas the shank is smooth. So that way the shank goes beyond this bracket. I use washers to make up the difference. I torque it down using grade 8 hardware, and then I follow up with a nylock nut. That way, if in fact this actually did work loose a little bit, you have lots and lots of time to catch it, because this is not a factory control arm. It doesn't work the same way as a factory control arm. It's meant to allow the rear end to move a lot more freely than it normally would with the stock bushings and lower control arm setup. But that's the reason why. And if you lower the blocking down and make it so you can move the rear end around, you'll find that the rear end will tip either way. It'll go up and down. It's very free moving, and you want that. You want it to only do what it's supposed to do, not bind or anything like that. And so that's one of the changes that it makes to the car by setting it up that way. So that took care of that, and thanks for watching.